The United States military had thrown away its sniping capability after every major conflict of the 20th century. After World War II, disbanded. After Korea, disbanded. By 1966, the Marine Corps had no functioning sniper training pipeline, no doctrine, and a handful of rusted World War II-era M1D Garands that couldn't hold zero. The few precision rifles that existed were Winchester Model 70s borrowed from competitive shooting teams. The institutional knowledge built by men who had hunted Japanese officers across Pacific Islands was gone, erased. Not by the enemy, by the bureaucracy, and the NVA knew it. Their infiltration corridors through the valleys of First Corps ran virtually unopposed. They moved in company strength through river drainages northwest of Da Nang, the routes that fed rockets into the Da Nang rocket belt, because nothing could stop them with precision. Marine infantry patrols swept a valley, left, and the enemy walked back in the same night. Then a gunnery sergeant died outside a tent on Hill 55. A single shot. The Marine dropped in the dirt beside his hooch, and word passed through the platoon in minutes. The NVA had sent a sniper, not to harass the perimeter, to kill one specific American. The enemy had dispatched a man the Marines would come to call the Cobra, and the Cobra had announced himself by murdering a Marine where he slept. That was the world Captain Edward J. Land walked into when he arrived in First Corps in October 1966. Land had built the first post-World War II Scout Sniper course in 1961 for Fleet Marine Force Pacific in Hawaii. Now 1st Marine Division Commanding General Herman Nickerson gave him his mandate in terms no one could misunderstand. "I want snipers in this division. I want them killin' VC." Land needed shooters. He recruited from the Marine Corps Rifle Team. That is how he found a sergeant from Wynne, Arkansas, who had learned to shoot at age 10 with a J.C. Higgins .22 because his grandmother's family needed meat on the table. Carlos Norman Hathcock II had enlisted in the Marine Corps on his 17th birthday. By August 1965, he had won the Wimbledon Cup, the 1,000-yard National High-Power Rifle Championship at Camp Perry, Ohio. He deployed to Vietnam in 1966 as a military policeman at Chu Lai. Not a sniper, a cop. Land pulled him out and assigned him to the 1st Marine Division Scout Sniper Platoon on Hill 55, 12 miles south of Da Nang. His rifle was a Winchester Model 70 in .30-06 Springfield, fitted with a Unertl 8-power external adjustment target scope, a competition weapon pressed into combat because nothing purpose-built existed. Marine armorers glass-bedded the stock and hand-selected lots of 173-grain Sierra Match King match ammunition that grouped tightest. It was a target shooter's rifle. Hathcock made it a killing instrument. His spotter was Lance Corporal John Roland Burke, 1st Battalion 26th Marines, a young Alabaman who carried the team's spotting scope and called artillery corrections. Charles Henderson, Hathcock's biographer, described Burke as the best spotter Hathcock ever worked with. The two-man team was the weapon, not the rifle. Burke read wind, maintained security, directed fire support. Hathcock pulled the trigger. Burke had less than 3 months to live. That story is coming. But first, the Cobra. Hathcock and Burke stalked the NVA counter-sniper through brush near Hill 55 for days. The Cobra fired first. His round hit Burke's canteen, inches from his spine. They repositioned. Hathcock settled behind the Winchester, scanning the tree line through the Unertl, and caught it. A single glint of sunlight on glass. The reflection off a rifle scope. He fired. The 173-grain Sierra round traveled straight down the Cobra's scope tube and out the back of his skull through the eye socket. Hathcock understood what that trajectory meant. The only way that bullet passes cleanly through a scope is if the man behind it is looking directly at the shooter at the exact instant the trigger breaks. The Cobra had Hathcock in his crosshairs. Hathcock won the trigger race by a fraction of a second. The glint of light on glass, the last thing the Cobra ever broadcast. That duel proved the NVA were actively hunting Marine snipers. It also proved that Land's rebuilt program had produced men who could win those hunts. Weeks later, in March 1967, Hathcock and Burke would prove something larger, that two men with bolt-action rifles and a radio could do what an entire infantry company could not. They attached themselves to a long-range patrol leaving Hill 55, then broke off alone, climbing to a hide site on a rocky prominence above the Coude River Valley. Elephant Valley, the NVA's corridor into the Da Nang rocket belt. Veterans of Delta Company, 1st Battalion, 26th Marines described it simply: everything north of the river and west of their position belonged to the enemy. At first light, the valley mist burned off. Below them, moving across open rice paddies along the road by the river, an NVA infantry company, roughly 150 soldiers. Henderson's account describes them as mostly 16 and 17-year-old conscripts, poorly led and short on experienced officers. Hathcock killed the 2 men at the head of the column. A deliberate decapitation. Eliminate leadership first. The formation collapsed. 150 soldiers went prone behind a paddy dike in the open, with no idea where the shots had come from, no idea how many shooters they faced, and no cover that could save them. The dike was a trap. It provided concealment from a single angle, but Hathcock and Burke sat above them. They could shift position slightly and see the entire length of the dike from an enfilade angle. Anyone who raised a head was killed. Anyone who stood was killed. Anyone who tried to crawl was killed. The geometry was lethal. The NVA believed they were behind cover. They were in a coffin with no lid. Night fell. Burke called in illumination rounds. The flares popped overhead and drifted down on parachutes, turning the black paddy into a white-lit killing field. Shadows swinging as the flares swayed, and then figures moving, and then figures not moving. They slept in shifts. 1 man always watched. The siege ran days. Hathcock said 5 in interviews. The team ran low on everything: peanut butter, cheese, John Wayne crackers, ammunition. Burke shifted to calling artillery adjustments because they couldn't afford to spend rifle rounds on every target. Then the NVA broke. 2 platoons massed for a desperate sprint towards small buildings at the far end of the paddy, the only hard cover in the valley. Hathcock shot them as they ran. Those who reached the buildings believed they had found safety. Burke called in a high-explosive artillery fire mission. The buildings ceased to exist. When Marine infantry swept the valley afterward, they found the dead scrambled beyond accurate counting. Impossible to separate sniper kills from artillery kills. No confirmed kills were recorded for the team for this engagement. Hathcock's own words years later: "They had the bad luck of coming up against us. Nothing but a bunch of hamburgers out there." Weeks after Elephant Valley, Burke deployed with 1st Battalion, 26th Marines to the hills above Khe Sanh. On the 6th of June, 1967, his sniper team was overrun on Hill 950, Quang Tri Province. Every man on the team became a casualty. Burke armed himself with grenades and charged the enemy positions alone. His Navy Cross citation reads that he stormed from the bunker in a valiant 1-man assault against the enemy positions. He was mortally wounded. He was 23 years old. Hathcock was at Quantico when the letter came. From Captain Land. The best spotter he ever had? Gone. The NVA and Viet Cong organized counter-sniper operations specifically around Hill 55. At least 1 platoon-sized counter-sniper team was deployed against Marine snipers in the area. Other Marines on Hill 55 started wearing white feathers in their bush hats, mimicking the single white feather Hathcock kept in his hatband to draw enemy fire away from him. The NVA knew him by name: Long Trang, White Feather. U.S. accounts report a bounty of $30,000 on his head, though Vietnamese language records do not corroborate the figure, and the only documented bounty in the Sea Tiger, the Marine Corps newspaper in country, was $8 on any American sniper. The record itself carries an honest gap. The 1st Marine Division Command chronology for March 1967 does not list an engagement matching Elephant Valley's reported scale and duration. Sniper team contacts often appeared only in regimental paperwork or were folded into single-line entries. The engagement is attested by Hathcock's interviews, Land's testimony, and the Cooper and Small study at the Army Command and General Staff College, but the official archive is thinner than the legend. That does not erase what happened. It means the documentation caught up to the men slower than the men moved. On the 16th of September 1969, during his second tour, Staff Sergeant Hathcock was riding atop an amphibious tractor on Highway 1 when the vehicle hit an anti-tank mine. Burning gasoline sprayed every man on the hull. With burns over 40% of his body, Hathcock pulled 7 Marines from the wreck before someone doused him in a roadside ditch. His combat career ended on that highway. Multiple sclerosis, diagnosed 1975. Medical retirement, 1979. 55 days short of 20 years service. On the 12th of November, 1996, at Quantico, Lieutenant General Paul K. Van Riper pinned a belated silver star on his chest. His son, Staff Sergeant Carlos Hathcock III, held him upright for the ceremony. MS had taken his legs. He died the 22nd of February, 1999. He was 56. Two men on a hillside above a river valley. Bolt-action rifles and a radio. One of them would be dead in weeks. The other would spend the rest of his life carrying what that valley cost. Hathcock once said he loved hunting but never loved killing. The valley remembers both.